This is episode number 206 of the Plein Air Podcast, and today you're going to learn about how to build a career and make a successful living from someone who's done both, featuring artist Tom Lynch.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called plein air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and welcome to the Plein Air Podcast. The Plein Air Podcast is rated the number one in the world in terms of podcasts about painting. Number one in the world from Feedspot 2021. They have a list of the top 15, and Plein Air Podcast is number one. Wow, we are so excited about that. Thank you for making that happen. Welcome, and thanks for tuning in today. We've got lots going on around here. First, some sad news. Well, we had to cancel the Plein Air Convention that's coming up in May in Denver. Very sad news. We're going to put it in Santa Fe the following year in the spring. But the good news is that we have already scheduled Plein Air Live for April to be like spring training. And it's a virtual online conference, and we'd love for you to go. Of course, we can't hold our conference, so we'd really love for you to go. Anyway, we have a world-class faculty. We have faculty from all over the world. We will have attendees from all over the world. We have ways that you get together and communicate with each other. And we have people doing demos, and it's basically 3 days. Plus, there's a beginner day, which, of course, if you want to see those masters, you sign up for that too. And for about the price of a dinner out for 4, you can attend a 3-day conference on plein air painting with top masters. I mean, how do you get that elsewhere? It's just great. And you can get up to a year of replay, so you can watch it over and over and over again. So do yourself a favor and check it out. It's called PleinAirLive.com. And of course, once the convention happens, it's going to be, the dam is going to break loose. Everybody's going to want to come because we are tired of being alone. Now, we have also reinvented online workshops. We've got some new tools to help you learn better and faster. We call them the Soar Workshops because you retain more, you learn faster, and you soar. And our first two are Bill Davidson and Thomas W. Schaller. You can learn more about those. You should watch the video. It's pretty interesting, actually. Learn more about them at soarworkshops.com. Now, the last time we did the Plein Air Salon, we were going to do it at the convention, but of course, we couldn't do it, so we did it online last year. Now we're going to be doing it again online. It'll be part of the Plein Air Live in April. That means you have just 2 more monthlies to enter, the February, which you need to enter by February 28th, and then there's a half month in March because you have to enter by the 15th. There's a $15,000 grand prize, the cover of Plein Air Magazine, and $30,000 in total prizes, all category winners. If you enter in any category, even a little tiny category like, pick one, nocturne painting, all right? And those small categories don't get as many entries typically. If you win in any category, you get entered into the national competition. You could win the national prize, which is the big bucks, all right? So pick your best paintings. They don't have to be your freshest paintings. They can be older paintings, just your best. That's what we care about is good paintings. And enter at PleinAirSalon.com. Now, I should tell you that the next issue of the magazine coming out is the 10-year anniversary issue of Plein Air Magazine. It's hard to believe. I mean, time flies when you're having fun. Actually, it's older than 10 years because we were out 3 years and then we had to close down. We skipped a few years and then we came back. So we are celebrating the 10, but it's really 10 plus 3. In that issue, there's an article called 5 Steps for More Satisfying Commissions, which you don't want to miss. Also, we have a newsletter called Plein Air Today. It's free. You can get it anywhere in the world. It comes out by email. And just go to pleinairtoday.com and get it, or you can go to outdoorpainter.com to sign up. That's our website. Coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering your art marketing questions in the Marketing Minute. But first, let's get right to this really, really, really good interview with watercolorist Tom Lynch. Tom Lynch, welcome to the Plein Air Podcast.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have no place to go, though, because it's 5 degrees and we got 5 inches on the ground.
What do you mean you have no place to go? You can go outside and paint. You can't do it in watercolor.
Behind the steering wheel, many a time. I really love snow scenes as well, and I wish it was more conducive to truly just dressing warm and getting out there. But a frozen palette can just it's like bridges over roads. It will freeze too fast. So a big window, and I have a big van, so just can't get into those remote areas where the beauty is just a little better than from the parking lot.
Well, all my friends in Russia paint with vodka.
Aha! What do they use for the palette?
Yeah. Some of it makes it into the painting.
Well, that's what I was thinking you meant. Okay, I'm with you.
So, Tom, you have a career that has spanned 50 years?
Yeah, I'm 70, and I was, art school in the late 60s. I did commercial art for a short amount of time, but I really felt, I liked doing the landscape painting, but you don't jump out of art school and, head right into the galleries and so forth.
Well, you think you can at the time. You're invincible at the time.
That is true. I'm dealing with that with grandkids. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So tell us this story. Let's go back. You ended up being on TV. What was it, on PBS or something? And
yes, that's right. There was no internet, no cable.
Yeah.
It was just straight antenna channels and public television. So I've really followed. I'll back up a step further and then get to that particular stage. So I wanted to go, I should say, to art school, and I was a child of 4 children of my parents, and I was the only son. Now, back in the 60s, parents worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, and they were so proud that their son, me, had an athletic scholarship in gymnastics or tennis. But I came to mom and dad and said, I want to go to art school. But I had shown a great desire and interest, and I'm actually grateful. I wasn't really good. I wasn't the best in class. So I worked harder at wanting to get something, and then when I get it, boy, I cherished it and wanted to, take it further. Versus I had fellow artists in school that, boy, they could just sit down and just all of a sudden make it work. And oh my gosh, I had to struggle a little extra. So anyway, I went to some Saturday classes through high school, taking art lessons, and because I had desire, not because I had a gift. At least I didn't feel it was. So you can, and a lot of people come to me and they go, oh, I wish I could do this. I go, well, just take the time. What you can't teach, I think, is passion. And I had that magic ingredient, Eric, the passion to want to create and make art.
You see, I think that's what the gift is, because you hear, well, we have constantly people who think, well, I can't paint because I don't have any natural gifts or any natural talent. And I'm sure there are people who have that, but most of us didn't start out that way. We started out, we just never gave up, right? It was all about just having that passion and just saying, I'm going to just keep doing it until I get it right.
There you go. That's exactly it. So that's that magic ingredient, the passion, to sustain, the failures and to struggle along with it. I'll compare it to golf a lot of times. It's not a game of how you handle the successes. It's how you handle the failures, how you miss a shot and how you recover, mentally as well as, with the accuracy. So, we had a little deal with my parents, and they just almost wanted to cry, but I was so active in high school in the arts, but athletics too. And I used the athletics as really my direction on extra effort, extra practice gives you the results you're looking for. So I took that sports athletic drive and then put it into my same philosophy as art or whatever profession I was going to go into. You put the extra time in, put the extra effort in, and hey, you're going to get the result that you're looking for instead of just wishing and hoping, that things will get better.
What did your parents do to give you that sense of work ethic? Because I'd sure like to know how to bottle that and give it to my kids.
By example, Eric, my dad worked, a couple of jobs. He worked for the railroad in accounting. Although he wasn't an accountant, he had to train the college graduates on how to do the accounting that he was doing all along. And then early mornings, he would drop off mail in a mail box that the postal carrier would pull a load and reset his bag and then continue his walking route. And then once a month, he would work as a bartender during a banquet. And so I saw him, and then he comes home from work, and we have a meal, and he's out fixing something or shoveling, whatever. So, I was around this attitude of that's just what we do. We got some extra time, we get up and do it, and we do some extra. And then I saw my mom, too, when after she'd raised the kids and they were still now going to school full time, she would find a part-time job that would only be after the kids left for school, and then she would be home when the kids came home from school. So that showed me a lot. And then I had athletic coaches. My freshman year coming into high school, I saw that tennis captain, and the coach just saw me with such a look of awe in my eyes. He goes, "Did you really admire the, Captain Bob or whatever?" And I go, "Gosh, yeah." He goes, "You could be captain someday." I go, "Oh my, no, how? What do you mean?" He goes, well, he did all summer. He was practicing. The season was over. He was still practicing, and he helped motivate his teammates and so forth. And so through that extra effort gives results, both in sports and watching my parents. That's where I just automatically became a part of it. And I wanted something desperately to make this art. So I really wanted to go to art school, and they knew that, but they teach art at the college, which they did, but it wasn't the very formal traditional format. It was a little more creative. So I went a year to university, and then we did a deal. So we went a year to university. I collected those paintings. I went a year to art school, collected those paintings. So what was I going to do next? Actually, it was a semester in each. So I came back and had a little formal meeting with my parents and laid out just the artwork on the table, and not saying which one was which or from where. And so my dad would pick up one of these, and he looked at it with a puzzled look in his face and his eye, and he turned it upside down. And he didn't know what to do. He set it down, grabbed another one, and he had a smile on his face. His eyes lit up, and I can picture this one. I go, "Dad, the first one that you were puzzled with was the university, and the one that you liked that I liked was the art school, and that's why I'm going to move back home. I'm not going to, stay away at college, and I got a part-time job. I want to go to art school now for the next semester." So they could see it, and they agreed with it. And I, here a college kid, he wants to move back with his parents, and he actually got a part-time job so that he could fulfill this desire, this passion. So I went to the American Academy of Art. That was a great institution in its time. Richard Schmidt, who we both know, was a forerunner out of many other great artists that came out of that school.
So this is in Chicago.
Yes, sir. Yes. And I lived in the suburbs of Chicago, so that's why I moved back home versus going to Southern Illinois University, which was out of 150 miles away. So I had actually taken some Saturday classes there when I was in high school and wanted to go back. And then so I followed both a painting, tutorial as well as a illustration, gravitated to a black and white illustration, spent my 3 years there, and then came out and worked as a home furnishings illustrator doing black and white renderings for newspapers, because in the 70s, the photography didn't have the clarity and the contrast that we could create with pen and ink and wash for the newspaper to showcase whatever. I was a home furnishing specialist, so anything in the interior of a home is what I was doing. In fact, I always apologize to people saying, well, the reason that you were probably fooled into coming to the store to buy this sofa is because my job was to make it really plush and lush and tufted, and I would dress up these backgrounds. You're looking out the window and the setting of the room and the shadows coming out the window. so that you were forgetting about the sofa, but what little you saw was much beyond what you were seeing when you went there to buy it.
Well, what great training when you think about that. I mean, there are two things about that. First off is the idea of storytelling in an inanimate object and something that, it just, it seems like it would be difficult to make it exciting. And then also this idea of just painting values. I mean, painting values for that much time had to have a huge impact on your painting ability.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said earlier, because I hadn't thought of it as telling a story, but I've always thought of it as a great tutorial training for drawing as well as what you said, value study. So, that common phrase, color gets all the credit, but value does all the work for our paintings. I couldn't agree more with. So my training, working 4 or 5 years in a studio, working black and white, tone and wash, and then to dress it up with, shadows and light and, bric-a-brac on the table next to the item that you were selling and whatnot. So that's yes, that was unbeknownst to me, couldn't have been a better training for any level of and any medium of painting, having worked in black and white. So then it was a point in time where I was able to work part-time with the studio and then develop, my repertoire of clients for paintings, which was every art fair, every bank, every hospital, every library, whatever would show art. I was rotating, paintings or prints constantly for years, doing street shows. But I was wise enough to collect a lot of names, collect a lot of build a following. And so when I went to galleries, I had a database instead of coming in hat in hand and portfolio under my arm. Would you like to take my work? I go, I've got, 500, I got 1,500, I got a couple thousand names of people, and I'm looking for representation so I can get out of the art fair circuit.
Well,
So,
I want to stop and pause on that, because I think that's really a critical importance. As you know, I teach art marketing, and you said two things there that I think are worth echoing. The first one is building that list, and I want you to address how you did that, because I think that's still very valid today. It's different technology, but building a list. And then the other idea of going to an art gallery and saying, look at what I have that gives you value, that separates you, that says, I'm offering something. I'm not the typical artist that's coming in and saying, hey, would you look at my portfolio and would you put me in? Yeah. You're coming in and saying, hey, I have a successful business now. I don't want to have to manage that business. I have a group of customers and I have a list of potential customers, and you're going to make a lot of money off me. I mean, you're going to stand out like a beacon. Yeah. That's
without question. That was the one of the secret sauces to the success of my career. So to answer your first question, any place that I had an exhibit without me there, I had a little box and a little tab someone could tear off a sheet of paper, slide it in the box that had a little lock on the front so it looked secure. It was the tiniest little lock that someone's, a kid would have. But anyway, it was just this idea. So prominently there above it was my biography. Here's what I am. Here's what I'm doing. Would you like to, know about my next show? Tear off this form or just write your name and address. And then I kept, that list kept updating it. Once a year, I wouldn't seize them, but once a year I would send postcards to that mailing list, either what's going on or where I would have a show. And I even started building a home show, an exhibition in my house where I took out all my furniture, but a few things. And then I would have my artwork on display where people could walk around. I mean, one sofa instead of a sofa love seat kind of a thing. And so that became an annual event. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. I went into the big travel day. And I was having, a couple thousand people coming to my house. I had to get a special permit for parking and having this once a year event and so forth. But that mailing was where I was there or not. If somebody came by, I had a pocket full of business cards. If I looked at how good the show was. Wasn't what the checkbook had in it. I looked at how many business cards I handed out. How many more names did I get in my list that were new? On the back of every painting that I sold, I didn't have one biography. I had 10 biographies in a folder. So when someone bought a painting and someone said, hey, I really like this, what's going on? Oh, well, he's got an extra one of his flyers, in the back of. I was one of the first to start putting color pictures on, flyers when, back in the day, everything was black and white. I mean, even American Artist magazine, my first article with them, it used to be only one page was in color. All the others were black and white. back in 1980. And I was the first one that ended up with 9 color images in the watercolor page. Versus now, here's how it happened. I happen to have had color separations already made for some other projects. So I went, like you said, to the gallery. I went to American Artist and Steve Doherty. Go, hey, let's, looking to do some features. But I also have a whole lot of these color separations of images. And I was looking at your magazine, and nothing has been said about doing night scenes in watercolor. Does that interest you? So I brought to them something that they hadn't had before, watercolor doing night scenes, color separation, so it saved them, $300 an image to separate. So that was ready to go in the magazine, so they could go beyond one image in color to having multiple images. So in 1984, boom, featured in one of my first features in American Artist magazine.
So I got to stop you again, because I you're just filled with nuggets. And I just want to make sure that people hear these nuggets, because they're so important. I mean, as an editor of a magazine, the one thing that nobody really understands is that we struggle to find articles. Every magazine in the world struggles to find articles, because, it's like, all right, there's the same 20 or 30 or 50 people who are, everybody thinks of all the time, but you're always looking for the next great artist and the next great idea and something like that. And sometimes you're in a bind. You have a moment in time when you're like, you got a deadline looming. You got to come up with a story today, and you got to come up with images today, and you've got nothing. And then you've got a file of things that people have sent you. And sometimes it's a pre-written article with a bunch of images. In your particular case, back when separations were required, you fulfilled that. And so you made it easy for them, and you made them look good. That was absolutely fabulous. And then, of course, I've always taught the idea of the bio on the back of the painting and the information on the back to reach you and so on. But I never thought of the idea of putting, 10 copies of it in there, have one glued to the back and then have more in there, so people have something that they can kind of hand out to their friends, because inevitably their friends are going to say, who is this artist? They're looking at it in their house.
Right. And if they like it, the person that's giving out the bio feels good that I'm actually helping my friend. It's like, I need a recommendation for getting my car repaired. Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
I'm liking the art in your home. Do you know anybody? So yes, but I want to, if you're not finished, let me know, but I just went to take a look at it. I will be honest with you. I did submit an article to American Artist magazine prior to the one I finally got one out. And the only thing framed in my office, and I've had some great awards, I've had some great paintings that I'm proud of, and all of that. I worked hard for it. But the only thing I framed so that I ground myself is my rejection letter from American Artist magazine, 1978, saying, Tom, thank you very much. We really appreciate what you got. Keep at it. But the idea that you kind of submitted, I was reading between the lines here. It was one paragraph, maybe 2 sentences. Anyway, just said no. So, and I kept that rejection letter. It's the only thing framed in my office. Now, and then next to it is with, they used one of my paintings on the cover of Watercolor magazine, which was an American Artist publication. So prior to the brilliant idea, so I got this rejection, and it's happened many, many times. What did I do wrong? In other words, I feel the proposal was wrong. I don't think I was rejected. I didn't give them what they were looking for. So I went to the library, looked at all the magazines, and you know what? Somebody already told them that blue and yellow make green, and that's how you make trees. So and I thought that was a brilliant idea, but my idea was old and had been told before. That's where I then looked at my paintings in the studio. Well, I didn't see any night scene scenes in watercolor in what I was looking at past issues. So that's where I then resubmitted this idea. Then I tagged in the bonus of the separations. And when I did, for whatever reason, different topic, I wanted to get one of my paintings in Field and Stream magazine. And I sent them, a sample of it, and I got a rejection letter back. And, the hat was too big, the fishing pole was too large. And so, the artwork was good, but it's not someone who knows fishing is going to look at this and laugh at it. So I then asked them, I said, fine, great, got the idea. I'm going to do my research. Now give me an idea of an article that's coming up maybe in a couple of months, 2-3 months down the road that you haven't even begun to search for an artist for it. I would like to, at no charge, submit 2 or 3 different examples for you to select from no obligation. You don't have to use them. You can reject them. But I'd like to play with some ideas down the road. Sure enough, they used one of them. And it was an article of a woman's first time going out and hunting and what the story was about, that experience. And then I created a couple of images. So I gave them samples, more than one, which no one does. And then I gave them before the article was even ready, before the pressure of the deadline came in. And so I'm looking for what I can do. And here's the secret sauce: better or different.
Well, I think also, you've done something that doesn't happen very much anymore. And I hear this all the time. It's like, I want to break through, but how much should I charge? It's like, just get it out there. Get it out there and get some recognition. You worry about charging later. And you did just that, and you were using your head.
So true. I used that sample. So I bought dozens of copies of the magazine so I could have that as a sample to tell the next client I'm already published, or there's others using me, so I'm in the system, I'm in the game, in a way, which was an important, aspect to that entire process. I still make dozens and dozens of copies of any articles and features, and included, when a painting goes out, there's practically a folder of all copies of articles, copies of features. So it's a pedigree of sorts, and I'm listing all the places that this dog has been showed, and in some cases it won best to show. If it didn't, it was still in this or that show. And so, I liken it to that to show the pedigree of this item that I've created, so that it has some importance down the road. Or as I laugh and say, when your grandkids show this on Antiques Roadshow, the more documentation they have, the more they'll get for it. They'll buy a car someday because of this painting. So.
That's right. Well, I think that you're really stepping up there and showing us some really great ideas on how to do this. This is fabulous. Let's keep going. So what happens next?
Your thought of keeping it, getting out there, I think is really valid, and I hope your listeners have that in mind. Just like you said, just get out there, get it started, get the game going, and then more things will happen exponentially. So.
I got to tell you this. I got to tell you this. I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but there's just salient points. I could probably count on one hand how many artists have been featured in Fine Art Connoisseur or Plein Air magazine, sometimes on the cover, and they will buy, one or two copies, and then they'll send out photocopies to people if they do that. Yet I know some artists, they'll call and they'll say, I want to buy every extra copy you have because I'm going to use it for 20 years. I got pitched by a very well-known artist on doing an art instruction video with us. And in that pitch package were 10 magazines, full magazines with a sticky note on open up to that article. And when it's one thing to see it photocopied, but when you see the actual magazine and you hold it in your hands, and I have people who they'll buy up all these magazines and then they'll send them to their collectors because it just makes it says to the collector, hey, I'm valid. I've been written about by a prominent magazine. Those kinds of things really matter. And yet a lot of people are just not doing it because they don't want to spend the money, or they think, just sending a photocopy is all that's needed.
I couldn't agree more. I actually caught American Artists off guard because I asked for 100 copies. Go, whoa, we don't have a price for 100 copies. We sell them, of course, to stores and restaurants and bookstores and whatnot, I meant to say. And they're not used to that. They didn't have that number. So let me get back to you on that. We're not sure. We'll have to, change the run or something of that nature. So, but that's exactly right. That actual copy looks good and looks sharp. So it was a slow transition out of the work in commercial art, and I was then every weekend was doing art fairs in the Chicago area for that summer seasons as well, and building more of a following. And I was suggesting even to people, did I have galleries? And no, but check with Merrill Chase. I think down the road we're going to build a relationship. So that was a gallery that I had interest in wanting to be associated with. Was one of the named galleries at that time. And so I was using actually my audience to go to that gallery to actually market for me. Do you have any Tom Lynch, art, so forth. So then when I presented myself to them, there was seemingly an interest. There was people connected. And I was showing to them, I wasn't wanting to work for them or have them work for me. I wanted to work together. This was a joint effort. I want to, build a relationship that will help us both. And so I think if someone has hat in hand, would you sell for me? And as opposed to, I'm going to give you samples of when I have a magazine article, give you some promotion. I'm going to add names as I pick them up, and I'm not going to quote compete with you. I'm not going to be doing any sales in the area or whatnot. I have my home show, so you're aware of that going in. It's not about wanting to take away. It's wanting to build this together, I think, is an important part, as opposed to having a gallery think, well, what are you going to do for me today?
I think that's critical. Again, my experiences with in my own situations, it's sometimes you just beg the artist to like do something, help us out here, because they expect, sometimes it's like, well, it's your job, you do all the marketing, and it's like, yeah, but you have also an audience and a following, and you need to do that as well. You need to help yourself out. And when you have that attitude of let's work on this together, it makes a huge difference. And I can tell you that the artists that I know that have that attitude when they're dealing with art galleries sell a whole lot more art than the artists who are just waiting for everybody to do everything for them.
Sure, that's the best. The answer for marketing is, do I want to take a marketing class or do I want to take a sales class? And no, I don't want to take a sales class. I want to take a marketing class. There was a phrase that someone said: to sell John Brown what John Brown buys, you must see John Brown through John Brown's eyes. In other words, I look at it from the customer's point of view. And so when I'm going there for a commission, let me show you different sizes. Let me show you different, framing. Let me show you different, options that we can work with, instead of, well, I've got these 3 paintings, in the inventory. Which one do you like? I'm wanting to, again, as I would do commercially as well as I would do, in fine art, how this can work. Can this work for you? How would you like this particular, scene and so forth developed? Or would you like to see the stages and kind of bring them into the process and take photos of the stages of the building of the painting and include that so they can, show others at the same time. So as I then got out of commercial art, it was a transition, slowly from having built that group and that mailing list and so forth. And it's the same thing I used when public television was showcasing Bill Alexander and Bob Ross. I began a letter writing campaign. And boy, if I don't not forget to say it, I'm going to say it now if I don't say it often. And so much now today as well, the power of the handwritten letter. What a difference, man! Oh man, I can't say enough about it. When I sales, it's for spray bottles, somebody bought 3 of them. I still put a handwritten letter for buying my little custom spray bottle versus if they bought a $3,000 painting. And so that's, I think, now is even becoming more important. And I made good use of it back in the day. So I began this letter writing campaign to the studio that was producing the TV show of doing art, Bill Alexander, Bob Ross, and so forth. They're saying, great thing going. I like what you've got. It's a great great activity that we can see on PBS, but you're missing watercolor. So, and oh, by the way, I do watercolor, but still, if I went at my last art fair, I did a count for you, and we had, 80% were watercolor people that were painters, and just kept every now and then sending letters to this particular studio. And oh, by the way, here's a sample of something I know would show well on TV. It was a nice high contrast image and so forth. I never got a reply. Never got it, but I still kept on, and I knew who I was writing to was the producer of that particular PBS. It was at a college. And finally, I get a call one day. Well, it turns out the person that worked for him, the producer of these TV shows, had someone in the office, came to an art fair, bought a print, had some extra biographies on the back, showed this particular picture to her boss, who was the producer. He looks at this, goes, oh, I never thought watercolor could be that way. So he had this image of high key, watery color, a lot of white, doesn't show well on television. And he sees this night scene that I had created of the city scene of Chicago. And then he looks closer and sees my name. He tells this lady, did he give this to you knowing who I am? She goes, no, she didn't know who I was, let alone, what do you mean who you are? He goes, this guy's been writing me for 6 months and I'm kind of feeling guilty. I've never responded to him. So they finally give me an audition. And even though they had prepared and found somebody that they were going to use to do a watercolor series, they decided to give me an audition. So I went out, spent the last $100 on a video camera, one of the ones that you have to put on your shoulder. They're so big. That's all the money we had in the bank. Honey, I got to buy this camera. I got to do some testing. And I wish, I had saved that first video. It was terrible. And so I go, I got to get better than this before I go there and do an audition with them. So I called up a local place that was a classroom studio, Art in the Barn it was called. And I said, can I do a demo for one of your groups in a week or so? She said, yeah, sure. Tom Lynch demo? Sure, come on in. So I brought the camera with, set it up in the back of the room, did my demo, watched it, and go, oh, that was so much better. Well, what was the difference? So I looked long and hard about pretending like there was people there instead of just a camera, stopped teaching like it was a college course and that there was something for, amateurs and hobbyists and those who just like to watch art be created. So did my practice, went there in California, did my audition. I asked everybody from makeup to lighting to sound, what's the secret sauce? What makes this work? Oh, be yourself, have some fun, make it interesting, lighthearted, not just, formal. And sure enough, then that was the secret ingredient. It worked. They then had me come back and produced several 13-week shows. So my marketing campaign through the magazine to get exposure was now exponentially exploded because of public television and the chance to watch this watercolor guy doing art. Now, all of my art friends going, you've just sold your soul. You're never going to get in a gallery again because you're doing art on television. You're making it look easy and, fun. And because Bill Alexander, had an image of using this 3-inch brush and how the happy painter and so forth. And I go, no, I think there can be still an element of quality but still it can look like I'm having fun making it, and not everything is exceptionally hard to do. So, and I did then break the mold of being, quote, the TV painter that paints gimmick art versus the gallery painter, and I found a happy medium in between. So
I'm curious about this because I'm working on a TV show. I can't say the network, but I've got a 3-letter network, and but I'm curious what happens. Well, once you've been on television for let's say the first 13-week episode, which is national, distributed nationally. What kind of things did you start seeing? What was the result of that? Or did anything happen for a while?
A lot of stuff. I mean, every art club that I didn't know wasn't an art club or where they were. So I was getting a tremendous amount of requests to come and teach workshops, to come to do a demonstration in front of their art group. I mean, Dallas just flew me in to do a demo for their 300 members that they have meeting once a month. And that was kind of a test to see if the people liked it. Would you then like to have this artist back and he'll teach a workshop? So that in the teaching realm was national, was just immediate, and exploded nicely. Then the gallery market did work as well, not as exponentially of an explosion, but did also showcase the name recognition. And the paintings that I was showcasing to them were much more elaborate, much more complex than the one bucket on the side of the building, at the farm, scene, that close up of the inside of a barn or something like that. So I was doing simpler scenes for TV that you could showcase, in our 26 minutes, for the 13-week show and so forth. So they didn't necessarily see it as a competition. That was kind of like, well, this guy is, able to do both more complex, which is our gallery art, as well as doing the parts that gave him some great exposure. So that was able to cross over as to showing images. And then on the TV show, I was showing something. I used this same idea. Now it's a much more elaborate scene. You can see 5 or 6 stalls instead of just one wall. And I would give them a feeling of the simple idea that I was showing for the TV was also a forerunner to the start of something that could be more complex later. So I always kind of bridged a little bit the gap of fun and simple art that a beginner might be interested in, and then the more complex art that a more experienced painter. And then just my personality of having fun along the way was fun for those that didn't even want to be an artist, but they like to watch the creativity process. So it helped both ends, both galleries and the teaching cycle. Then it went into the books. Now the back to the magazine. Oh, by the way, I've got this national TV series. Yes, we saw it. We'd like to do another story article on you. Could you, what do you have interested in that would be, for us? And so that then opened a lot of doors, I should say, for me to get going on my career. And that's, I would say to the audience as well that diversifying has been a secret ingredient, because with my longevity of 50 years or more, I've endured, like the '08 housing crash. I mean, there was an 80 cycles, there was an 80s crash, there was a 90s crash, there was an '08 crash. And so having not just relied on the galleries only, and all my buddies are telling me, hey, Tom, what's this? What do you do? This travel, this teaching. You stay home, you do a painting, you ship it to the gallery, and they mail you a check. What's wrong with you? I go, well, I still like giving back. I still like teaching. The travel doesn't bother me. It's a change of pace. I've been away for a week. Boy, I can't wait to get back in the studio. So I'm more excited about doing my studio paintings after I've been away from it, showing other people some simpler version of paintings. And so that diversification has kind of saved me through a lot of economic ups and downs.
Well, I'd also say, to address that also, there's a theory. If you imagine the Parthenon, and the Parthenon, the top of the Parthenon, I don't know what they call that part, but the top of the Parthenon is resting on a single column in the middle. And a car backs up, knocks that column out, and that piece comes down, crashing down. And that's one of the things that every artist needs to understand, is if everything is relying on one particular thing, let's say it's Facebook or it's Instagram or it's magazine advertising or it's galleries or, whatever, if it's on one particular thing, when things get bad and that column crashes, you're dead in the water. But if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 columns, nothing's going to make that thing topple unless they all come down. And 2008 is a great example. I mean, we saw 200 art galleries go out of business. We saw a lot of people, never sell paintings again, because they were stuck in their old way, and it crushed them. But by having that diversity, it really made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think the diversity of size, diversity of style. A lot of artists, I feel, are constantly asked about style, and to me, I tell them point blank. I said, to me, the sign of a successful artist is it can work in different mediums, but more so that can work in different styles. So I can do loose, I can do light, high key, I can do dramatic, I can do dark, I can do black and white, I can do small, 8x10, I do 9x12 for plein air events. And so there's a plein air painting. And so in my workshops, I hand out a sheet that says there's 4 different things that I'm doing. I'm doing a workshop painting, I do studio paintings, I do plein air paintings, and I do illustrations. I do, renderings that are very close to the photographic accuracy that someone as a collector or some institution, may want to have for still making me to do art for them. So don't have it be where you're trying to convince them, this is what my work looks like, and this is what I do. So I tend to take, myself out of the equation. I want to make a living as an artist. I don't want just the lifestyle of being an artist. And so that diversifying is the reason I'm surviving. A year from today, I walked out of a workshop in Marco Island, and they just said, we're canceling. We'll still send you a check, but we're not going to have class. I'm sorry you had to drive all the way from Chicago. So when I got back 22 hours later, first thing I did was, okay, let's start get going on this broadcast thing. Let's get the cameras out. Let's set up the studio. Let's try a couple different versions. Do I want to use what format, YouTube, Zoom, and so forth, to do my broadcasting? And I was up and running March 1st, and I did the Mrs. Fields cookie trick, her secret to success. And I listen to a lot of other businesses, and I read a lot of books. There's a book called, I'll come back to it in a minute. Right. So I was giving away demos for free. We're just going to start offering demos. Here it is. Send the link. Here's the watch it, click it, so forth. And I did that for a couple of months. Only in June did I start charging for the demos and the classes and the workshops that I was, greasing the pig or whatever for getting people interested in what I'm doing and making that transition from going to a live class to going to a online class. And the title of the book is called Good to Great, and it's about why certain businesses are successful, why they were the best. A&P was the best going, business after the war, and why all of a sudden Kroger came up and blew them out of the water because A&P wouldn't change. They said, we got concrete floors. People have been shopping on concrete floors forever. We don't have to change. We don't need to put a cleaners in a grocery store. It's groceries that we sell. Yeah. So forth. Many other businesses, they were not willing to change. And so I listened to these that's one of my favorite books on tape. And it's got nothing to do with art. It was why this business is great, why Pitney Bowes, was able to pivot. And that's exactly what I did. I got home. First thing I did was not, woe is me. I'm not going to have any workshops. I'm out of business for the year. How can I address that next step or the interim step?
Right. That book was written by Jim Collins. It's a classic, and it is, what I've realized, and I read that book way back, everything changes about every 3 years.
Yes.
And actually the rate of change is happening faster now because of all the technology. And, we saw, like I said before, we saw so many artists who they just, and galleries, they said, okay, this is the way we do business. And everything back pre-2008 was you're waiting for people to come in the door. When you had this perfect storm in 2008, when you had Amazon come about and the internet was coming about, and then you had the economic crash. And so as a result, you had all of a sudden everything changed. And everybody thought, well, it'll just come back. It'll come back. And it didn't come back. And so the ones who survived, I actually know of a gallery that launched in 2008 and became one of the top selling galleries within a year, which is unheard of because all the other galleries stopped advertising because they were afraid. And he just started advertising like crazy. He took all their customers away. And we all forget that in any economy, there's always people who can spend money. Now, there may not be as many people, but if you have a strategy where you're the one that's out there pushing it, which it sounds like you were doing, you're going to get that income rather than somebody else.
Yeah.
So the plein air thing, talk to me about that, Tom, because you obviously, you get outside, you still get outside and paint. Tell me a little bit about the whole plein air side of things. Well,
that's, to me, is, we had said before, is the part of the circle, a part of the links that you've got to do. I, as a teacher, can't teach somebody certain things unless we're sitting in front of that particular tree or that particular scene. And so I can talk about the color or the edge or the shape and so forth. We both can't look at the same photograph. We both can't look at the same subject. We both can't find that it's more texture in a tree that we're looking at this one, or the bark is not. It's not a tree. It's not a bark. It's an artwork in a way. So I find the plein air painting time is a training tool for me to get better. Now, I'm glad that I can go to plein air events and get paid to be trained to get better by doing paintings and then selling them at the end. But for me, it's the beautiful time to paint live. Love the pressure of other artists doing it there as well. And I got to, do something really good because I know Charlie Hunter's going to knock me out of the water in his black and white image for what I'm doing. So I've got to take it up a notch or whatever. So, that to me is, and the pressure of having, I announce a show. I'm going to do a series of outdoor cafes. Why? And I'm going to have the show because I need to get better at painting figures in my landscape. So I might as well tell everybody that I'm going to be doing a series of outdoor cafes, and I better get good fast at painting people because I just told everybody it's going to be a big show at the end of the year. So I put that pressure to me. I love it. I love going out and painting plein air. It's part of being trained. It's another look to a painting that's different than what I would do in the studio. And not only black and white, but most of them are color, but still I like the idea of doing both. I like the smaller size, the quicker gesture, the simple elegance, that I'm looking for and creating. It becomes a visual guide for me to look at in the studio when I'm developing a painting. I look at plein air, not even the same scene, but just plein air paintings first, while I'm getting a painting started, so I can have that secret ingredient underneath all those extra brushstrokes that necessarily aren't needed each or every time. And
it sounds like you're reinventing yourself all the time.
I need to, without question, I need to. And I'm, we called it on location painting. I've been doing it, a bunch of years ago, and now it's a whole genre unto itself, and I love it, like being a part of it. I like lecturing and demonstrating. When I was at the, convention for you, I was always thinking, what can I do extra? And after watching a couple of them, I went back to the hotel room, figured out some handouts, went to the printing store and said, I need 150 copies of these because I want to print out some handouts for people that are going to come to, my demo, and they'll have a little something extra. Then in their hand instead of making them buy a book. Give them a little brochure that talks about what my thinking or my philosophy is, so they can watch instead of taking notes. Because I saw people with their head down taking notes, and they should be having their head up watching what's going on. But yet you want to remember part of it or certain elements to it. So that better or different philosophy is, what I brought to, your convention at the same time. It's an important part of wanting people to get the idea, get the message, and give back.
You're also getting something in their hands that has your data on it. You have a website that sells all kinds of cool stuff that I just bought some stuff, as you know. And so now you're not only giving them something of value, you're also giving them something that if they want to remember your name and they want to visit your website or whatever, you've got that.
Yeah, I look more at what I can give out versus than what I can get for it.
Of course.
Because it always pays back. So I don't any longer have to. Maybe way back when I was spending maybe money that was going to be on the credit card that I'm printing those extra color flyers or whatever, am I going to get this return on this? And so now I can say without question to everybody, you'll get the return. Give the extra, whether it be in a handout or do the extra painting for a client so they can choose between two or whatever. You'll sell the other painting. You'll get more reward for it. It pays back the dividends. You no longer have to worry, as I did, is this worth it? Because I can tell you hands down, it is worth it. And to this day, I'm still, doing it that particular, go the extra step, think of what extra I can do, not what I'm getting out of it, then I'm not just, brought there just to do a demo. I'm brought there to meet a whole new audience, and I want to make sure I have a business card for each of them.
Right. You're a true pro. Let me ask you a couple of very succinct questions because we're going to run out of time if we don't do it. The first one is, I'll ask both of them and then you can address them both. The first one is best advice for training yourself as an artist. And assuming that a lot of the people listening to this might be at an early stage. And part B of that question is best advice of pushing yourself to the next level. And then part C is best advice for building an art career.
All right.
Go.
Got it. Remember, you're talking to somebody who's 70. See if I can multitask here and remember the best advice.
So 70 is the new 30,
Yeah. Okay. Composition and drawing, best advice for an artist. Don't seek a style. Your style finds you. And if anything, you should diversify and have more than one style or one way in which, one genre that you can create. And in that creative process, I can't say enough about the drawing, even if it's abstract or representational. Drawing is a foundation. Composition, in my checklist of, the short list is 7, the long list is 12. Composition is number 1. Bury yourself in all those that, can teach you about the composition, because I feel technique can't save a bad composition. If that tree's in the middle of the painting, if it's a lollipop, and it's got no contour, it still is. No skillful artist with a brush can save it. And so that would be first and foremost. Now, someone who has new skills, even a primitive style, if it's a good composition, that it's still going to be a successful image. It isn't the style that saves the image. It isn't the technique, even though I teach technique classes, but I also teach, the composition part and tell my students in a workshop, that's where we got to start with. And we can add whatever skill level you have to a good composition. You're going to have a good painting at the end of the day, I feel. So that's the answer to question number 1. What was question number 2? Because I was thinking of the answer while you were asking me.
Well, the pushing yourself to the next level, because we hear that a lot. And that is, I kind of feel like I'm stuck and I know what I'm doing isn't as good as it should be, but I don't know how to get there.
So you really look at, not only the masters, but you look at the contemporary greats, and just take that painting apart. When I got a book, I painted the painting of the painting that was in the book. I just didn't look at the practice parts later on. So every book that I have is dog-eared and it's got smudged on it because I was copying the painting. So like the kids in the Louvre, they put their little easel in front and copy the masters just to get some kind of formulation of what's the difference between their rendering of that scene. What was the brush stroke? Was it left or right, top to bottom? Was it a better color, better contrast? And so vicariously, the looking closely at and copying, works that you admire, then I've always said to people stop having a picture of a photograph when you're making art, whether it be someone else's art or whether it be paintings that you've done that you've liked really well. Looking at art while creating art will get you there faster, but you aspiring to something better than what you're doing. And so, I mean, I was never an oil painter, but I would look at every Schmidt painting. I bought every one of his books. I would look long and hard. What and how? How can I translate this to watercolor? What's the secret ingredient? So still, I drove 900 miles, knocked on the door of John Pike in Woodstock, New York, and said, I really like what you're doing in watercolor. Is there any chance I could ever watch you do it? And I'll pay you and so forth. And go, great. What part of town are you from? I go, no, I'm really from Chicago. Well, how did you know I was here? I said I took a chance. And he goes, gee whiz. Well, come on in, And so I showed that determined, and I did the same thing with many others. So I would look to see what I was worst at, then go to the bookstore, look to see who was great at. So I was lousy at composition. I went to Ed Whitney. I was bad at having value changes. I found, John Pike. I needed better color. California, Robert E. Wood. This guy got color. Edges, Sultan Zabo. Well, you're the greatest one of having variety of edges. I got to watch and see what you're doing. And so I slept in my van to go see this guy, have a workshop in Phoenix, Arizona, so that I could have better food. Do I want to have good meals or do I want to have a good bed? So I slept in the van for the bed, and I had a chance to have good meals while I was there watching him paint. So I went that extra effort to take apart my own paintings. And then it wasn't about, did I want to get a little bit better? Who was the best at it at this particular time? Nita Engel for Impressionism, Charles Reed for the first wash, Irving Shapiro laying down color. And so I would seek out, these, and if I just got one little nugget out of a book, it was well worth for that particular book. If I could just get a feel for what they were doing, and before video, was even available to have it in your own home. And so I would just slowly look at the greats, but I would see what part of them that I wanted to put into my art, not necessarily the overall. They didn't want to become a mini me of necessarily a great painter, which isn't all that bad if you want to be a Scott Christensen or so forth. But his rocks. I mean, there's just something about it isn't a rock. It's just a pure piece of art. And so I would look long and hard and watch them if I could, or attend with them. So never stop learning, never stop, getting better, but and be open to change. And so there'll be people that say, hey, your artwork's kind of going, a little more colorful than it used to do, and so forth. You may lose a customer or two, but you're going to gain twice as many because you've diversified and you've improved. That's don't paint. Be careful. Don't be careful painting.
Yeah. Well, you're a risk taker. You and I have a lot in common. I will get on an airplane and pay $1,500 to attend a seminar to get 1 hour of one guy and hope I get a chance to meet that guy in person and sit down with him for 10 minutes, because sometimes you can gain just one little nugget that changes your life, which is literally what happened to me to reinvent my business. And, when you were early in your career, there were no art instruction videos. Now today, for somewhere between 50 and a couple $100, you can, even if you're just going to learn one little nugget, it can be life-changing.
Absolutely. Without question.
Okay. And so the third question, and then we're going to wrap it up. The third question is best advice for building a career for those who want to make a living as an artist.
Diversify and build a following, collect the names. So now the internet, wonderful thing. I mean, do better than I have. I mean, I could still take lessons on building a better business through the internet, but still diversify. Don't do one thing one way, and you just collect that following, service that following on something that they can gain from it. I mean, whether like I did in the beginning of this last year, giving away the demos for free. Later on, now would you like to have a more complex lesson other than just watching a demo created? So give them something in exchange for they're giving you the interest in their particular name. I have a spot on my website where you sign in to tomlynch.com and you add to the mailing list. And I immediately give that person a free video to watch online. Just because you said you'd like to know about what I'm doing and teaching, the first thing I offer is something for free. Here's a link to a free demo. Thanks for clicking on my tomlynch.com mailing list. And down the road, I'll tell you more about when I'm going to have classes. But you're kind enough to be interested. Was it paintings? Was it prints? Was it education? Or just the curious of all the above? Or Plein Air? When I'm going to do my next event, you could come and see it. And so I encourage that diversifying and do more about giving in exchange for getting people to let you know who they are, where they are, and how you could get in contact with them should you have something to offer down the road.
Well, that's a spirit of generosity. I think that's a great way to operate. Tom, this has been fabulous. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. I've got, I just came off of Watercolor Live, which was one of our virtual events, which we've had to do because of our conventions. We've now learned that the Plein Air convention is going to be canceled for this year. Just learned that today. And what we're going to do Watercolor Live again next January. Would you be willing to be on the faculty of that?
Oh, by all means. No, I love paying back, love giving it forward. I like, and I like to be able to watch what the others are doing as well. So, that's a little secret sauce I haven't got into. See what's going on in the competition. Before I did art fairs, I went to art fairs, every one I could find for a year, and I looked and saying, well, I like this guy's booth, I don't like that guy's booth. This guy he was sitting down eating a sandwich in front of his booth, and this one went behind his booth to eat. So I like it as well because I want to learn how to be a better teacher, better painter. So thanks for inviting me, and yes, I would more than be thrilled to be a part of it. So I've got my red educator teacher's hat, so I appreciate the offer, and please include me.
All right, well, we'll get that done. Well, Tom, thank you so much. This has been fabulous. I could probably do this for about 5 hours with you. You're filled with great information. You have great ideas. You are exceptional in the idea of going the extra step, thinking things through about, what's the extra step that I need to take to make things happen. I've learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. I think you ended on a perfect note. That extra step is a secret sauce that will help everyone along the way. But and we've got a lot in common. We haven't had a chance to ever do this. We see each other in passing in the hallway, and we wave or give a high five. So now we have a reason to sit down and have a break bread together someday.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're ever together again, hopefully soon, we'll sit down and have a beer.
Oh, okay, sir. You got it. Thanks an awful lot, Eric, for including me.
Well, thanks again to Tom Lynch. He is a machine. I love that guy. Are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art. Proven techniques to turn your passion into profit.
That'd be a good book for you to own. I'm just saying. Okay, in the Marketing Minute, I answer your art marketing questions. Email yours to me at eric@artmarketing.com. Now, here's a question from Vicki Haley in Montgomery, Alabama, who asks, what should I do when people unsubscribe from my newsletter? Well, I think the first thing you have to do, Vicki, is you have to ask yourself, why did they unsubscribe? People don't unsubscribe unless they don't find the content valuable. And there's a whole lot of things you can do to make the content valuable, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, you can have a way that you can ask people. If you get a rash of unsubscribes, you could in theory, take those emails, write them a little note and say, hey, I noticed you unsubscribed. Can you give me some feedback? I wouldn't do it too many times. Wouldn't repeat the same people, but maybe you can find out why they're not reading it. But it always boils down to the same thing. They're not reading it because they're not interested, and they're not interested because it's not interesting. All right. Sorry. The problem is that most artists in their newsletters make their newsletter about them, right? It's the news of Vicki Haley in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, I've got a new painting out. Hey, I did an art show. Hey, I'm cool. The problem with that, Vicki, is that that's not very interesting to other people. It's only interesting to you, maybe to me. So what do we do about that? Well, the first thing we do is we try to make content that people want. Now, in my Art Marketing in a Box program, I developed a whole bunch of content for people that they could kind of have content to do this on a regular basis. But the bottom line is you want to make it interesting. So what would make it interesting? Well, maybe you teach something about art. Now, may not be teaching art itself unless the people getting your newsletter are students, But otherwise, maybe you have an interesting story about art that you open with each time. And then you introduce other things about the stuff about you, your paintings and the things that you've been doing and the trips that you've been taking. But, as a guy who gets 300 or 400 of those a month, and, think about some collectors probably do, they go around, they sign up for websites, and then they start realizing, well, I open it, I read it, I don't get anything out of it, or I don't like the work or whatever, and so they go away. Now, if they don't like the work, that's a whole different problem, and that's always about getting better. But look for ways to make it entertaining. Everybody wants to be entertained. Everybody wants to get to the point fast. If it's really, really super, super long and wordy, are they going to read it? Do you have really great photos? Do you open with something strong? Make it really good. That'll make a big difference. So ask yourself why and ask them why, and then make it better. All right. Now, here's a question from Carrie Moore in Cheyenne, Wyoming, who asks, how important is it to have a painting framed at a plein air competition event? I think, Carrie, it's critical. I think it's the standard. Right now, first off, you got to have a way to hang the painting in the show. And usually that means it's in a frame. Now, if you're a painter who paints on these kinds of canvases, which have the big, thick, square edges, and you paint around the edges, kind of a modern look, then maybe you don't need a frame. And some people will like that. But, a frame really is there to make the painting stand out. A beautiful frame makes it kind of enhanced. And that's why we put our things in frames, because they make them better. And the goal is you want to stand out. You want your painting to look great. And now I believe investing in great frames really makes a difference. We have a tendency to go cheap on our frames, and sometimes you can find inexpensive frames that are not cheap looking, and that's okay. But if you're going into Walmart and getting a bunch of frames and just trying to put them in frames, they're not going to look right typically. No, nothing against Walmart or Michael's, but the idea is you want a really good high quality frame. You want something that's going to really make the painting stand out. And then you also need to kind of understand what are the trends of the market you're going into. Like if you're going into a market that's very traditional, then gold frames are probably more appropriate than dark frames. But dark frames tend to do really well in markets that tend to lean a little bit contemporary. And, people will put paintings up that are not contemporary, but if the frames are contemporary, it makes it feel better. Anyway, so that's my feeling about frames. I think frames are really critically important. Anyway, that is the Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
All righty. Well, I want to remind you guys about a couple of things. First off, I mentioned at the top of the show, Plein Air Live. You want to get signed up for that. The price increase is on February 28th, and that's a really great bargain, and get it while you can. All right. Secondly, check out the Soar Workshops to make yourself soar. Go, even if you don't think you want to take a workshop, just go check it out. Watch the video. It's very interesting. It's soarworkshops.com, not S-O-R-E, but S-O-A-R, like soar like a rocket. And then the last but not least is the Plein Air Salon. Make sure you get entered for the Plein Air Salon competition on or before the 28th of this month. All right? Whew, lots to talk about. Now, if you've not seen my blog where I talk about life and art and philosophy and things like that, it's called Sunday Coffee. It's got a big readership, and we'd like to add you to that. It's called Sunday Coffee, but you can find it at coffeewitheric.com. Coffeewitheric.com. Just sign it up, and you will get it for free. All right. Well, this is fun. I love doing this every week. And it's really cool that we made the #1 podcast in the world for painting. That is pretty cool. That means Plein Air is on fire. Fire! This podcast is on fire. Oh, boy. All right. Nobody will ever listen again. Anyway, let's do this again sometime, like next week. I will see you then. I'm Eric Rhoads, the publisher and the founder of Plein Air Magazine, celebrating 10 years. You can find us online at outdoorpainter.com. Now remember, it's a big world. Go paint it. We will see you. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 Plein Air Painting Tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.